So you mentioned both of those categories, right? You got citizens on one side and you got the employees on the other. Wow, in this pandemic, David, who really bears this responsibility?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think people are feeling through that. You've also got states, right?
Mm,
So what, in the US, there's federal, there's state, there's local, and then there's companies.
mm.
And in many cases, like with contact tracing, the companies can't wait for the statewide contact tracers to do it because you've got to act very quickly. Otherwise, the data is not as useful in terms of protecting against spreading the virus. So I think everyone has a responsibility. We all have something called a duty of care, whether you're a CEO of a company or you're a mayor or a governor or president or prime minister, and that's to protect people. The great thing is, when we have the system in place and there's, as I mentioned, we're pre-integrated across, the system's always on, always watching. And what happens is there's several operational use cases, which actually save a lot of money for the customer, whether it's keeping their IT up, protecting from malware attacks, helping them to figure out where to deploy resources in a crisis to help drive more revenue. So actually, these operational use cases more than pay for the cost of the system. So it's doing well by doing good for your people and keeping them safe, but also a great return on investment for the business as well.
No, I hear you. But what I'm seeing over here and anywhere is government has been investing or spending for the first time a lot on this pandemic. Do you see them shift a little bit of this responsibility now to the private sector by saying, all right, we've fought this enough for the last almost a year. It's going to go on. We've pumped a lot of money into this, but eventually let's save the employee, because if you save the employee, you're saving the citizen. So is this, do you see the pendulum shift a little bit over here, or do you see government take the lead role on this?
Yeah, it's a really great area of inquiry because really what we have is a public health crisis,
Mm.
and that public health crisis is precipitating a potential financial crisis. So we have to continue to work on mitigating the public health crisis and therefore allow us to continue to keep the economies going and keep the businesses solvent. So it's all interrelated and it all ties together. And so that's where taking advantage of the technologies that are out there and deploying them at each level. So, again, we do countrywide deployments as we've done for Singapore. And now we've actually started to sign up across the industry verticals, the banks, the telcos, hospitality, healthcare. And so what we've done, I'll give you a more mature example for the state of Florida. We won the statewide deal in Florida, and then we won hundreds of cities, over 50 major corporations, many of the universities, the healthcare, the airports, train stations, first responders. And at this point, we have hundreds and hundreds of customers in Florida. And we're able to use something we call network effects, leveraging what we call the Everbridge private network, where we can get public and private collaboration, where people are opting in and sharing data through the platform. So in Florida, for example, we have 8 different collaboration zones with the Everbridge private network, one for the entire state, and then 8 different planning areas. So when there's a hurricane coming in, we're able to collaborate across. City of London Police is another great example. They've got almost 400 public and private organizations collaborating together, leveraging the platform. This is really a time where we have to all come together. The pandemic is what we call a black swan event. Probably should have seen it coming, but didn't. And then now that it's here, it changes everything. And so it's persistent and pervasive. So it's lasting month after month after month, and it's global. It's affecting everybody. So really, we all have to come together to try to solve this. And it can't be any one group doing it by themselves.
Hey, David, I got a good fortune of living in Singapore, and we call ourselves the smart nation. We've been working very hard towards that. It didn't just happen overnight. The government has worked over decades to make that. Any advice of where you see smart cities, smart nations, deploy such things?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very exciting area of growth. So we expect to see almost $160 billion spent on smart cities, safe cities by the year 2025. And it's all tied into this broader Internet of Things, or IoT, where you're going to see 75 billion with the B devices with IP addresses on the web. So if you go back to critical event management, again, things that you care about, now all of a sudden things that you care about include a much broader threat surface with 75 billion things that you care about that could be potential vulnerabilities. And then also getting all the data in to help you figure out what's going on in terms of situational awareness. So if you look at downtown London, for example, they've got more cameras than people. Those are all IoT devices throwing off massive amounts of data. So our ability to process all that data, curate that, and tell you in real time if there's something, something you need to worry about that you need to take action on, it's very powerful. So to that end, we've actually launched an extension of our CEM platform called CEM for IoT, which is powering a lot of what we're doing around safe cities and smart cities. And our platform really is the most scalable in the industry. We've got over 160 patents. We do over 5 billion communications around critical events every year around the world. And we're able to tie together a federated approach where you can look at a safe city or a smart city and tie all the data together around all of the different constituencies in that city and manage it at a scale that I don't think anybody else can manage it at. And we do that through our command center. So it's an area that we see really explosive growth, particularly in the Asia Pac region. And we're actually very excited about that. And yeah, I think Singapore has done a great job of being very intentional and thoughtful about their investments in that space, and a great model for others to look at.
Awesome, thank you. So now that we're at this junction, tell me, if you're in your crystal ball, what do you see the next couple of years look like for us?
Well, look, I think the world, as I said, it's a black swan event, and the world has changed going forward. So hopefully there's a vaccine very soon. And actually, one of the things we're doing to help pull together best practices, and we did this about 3 or 4 months ago, and now we're doing another symposium. We're calling it the COVID Road to Recovery. And this is R2R. This will be the second one of these that we do. So we're actually going to have Dr. Anthony Fauci coming to talk. We're going to have the top leadership from the CDC, including the main official in charge of the coronavirus response, the main official in charge of vaccinations and respiratory diseases. We'll have the CEO of the CDC Foundation, and then we'll have other keynote speakers, including a major world leader, as well as Sir Richard Branson and Dr. Sanjay Gupta from CNN. And then we'll have C-level executives, including CEOs of Fortune 50 and other leading companies, C-level executives from healthcare like Humana, Capital One, and financial services. Mayors, we'll have a governor from the United States, and we'll have global leaders as well. So we're going to bring together all of these leaders to share best practices on where do we go from here and how do we continue to reopen our economies. And so I encourage everybody to dial into that October 14th and 15th. It's free. You just have to log in and register in advance. It'll be 2 days of sessions. And we'll have a lot of information around what we're doing on the public warning side around the world as well, which I think will be very useful. So I think we can bring people together and help solve these problems together. And then you don't have to hear my crystal ball. You'll hear a crystal ball of a lot of really smart people that are in the middle of dealing with all this.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. In fact, we are doing our best to promote that in this part of the world too. I think it's an incredible speaker lineup. Absolutely.